Welcome. I am so glad that you're joining us this morning, Wisdom Network Live, and it's brought to you by Women Wanting Wisdom. And my name is Dr. Kathy Baker, and I am a marriage and family therapist, and we are a team. We come together as a team here. You'll get to meet all the ladies on the panel, but we come together because there's a real passion in all of us to see you accomplish what God created you for. And so many times we get lost in the process. We know what we were best at, we know what we're talented at, but we don't aim for it really well, and life gets in its way. And so, because life can get really messy sometimes. But our passion, and my passion, is to encourage you, to empower you, and to enlighten you. And I find the truth of living that, because you can really live it, but it takes work. And the only way that it's possible is that if you really tap into the only source that really gives life, and that is God. So we are not church, we're not real churchy on here. We talk about real topics, we talk about life and real issues. And so the topic today is going to be, God help me, I'm so depressed. And it was amazing because when we really started playing around, the team started playing around with this concept of talking about depression. It was like this flurry of everywhere we looked. People were coming going, this one's suffering with depression, that one's suffering with depression, my teenagers are suffering with my husband. And it seems like we have an epidemic in our society today. So it really just pricked my interest. And so we have brought in some awesome ladies today to sit on our panel. And one of my dear friends and partners in crime is in from, where are you from? Austin, Texas. She moves so much. Sometimes she's in San Antonio, sometimes she lives half of the time of her life in Mexico. But I'm not going to go there, right? That's your secret place?
That's my happy place.
There you go. So this is Karen Harris, and she is on the Governor's Council in Texas for women's issues. And she's appointed by the governor of Texas to really make some judgment calls and solutions and hopes and education on women's issues in the state of Texas. And then I have my co-host here, which is Christy Grannon. And Christy is my partner as far as ministry is concerned here. She's a teacher. She is really one of those people that really, takes and polishes my gift as far as questioning me. The best way anyone can learn is by asking questions. Yes. And that's what Christy does all the time. She comes and goes and says, I have about 6 questions, and my response is, you get one, because it would take me all day. And then my very, very honor, this is my honor, and just, I was just thinking about her this morning, and it's such an honor to have her on here, is Dr. Tammy Singleton. And I just, yay, Dr. Singleton. I'm so thankful that God brought you into my life.
Oh no, I think I'm the one who's thankful and grateful.
Yeah. She is beautiful, and as beautiful as she is, and brilliant, she is so favored and blessed of God. And
thank you.
God uses her in a mighty way.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm going to go through some of these things because I know it's a lot. But Dr. Singleton is an associate director of the Louisiana Center for Bleeding and Clotting Disorders, the section chief of pediatric hematology oncology, assistant professor of medicine and pediatrics at Tulane University School of Medicine in New Orleans, Louisiana, and she also holds the Marcel Schaefer Vergara Chair in Pediatrics, Hematology, and Oncology. Yes.
Impressive.
Wow. And that's not all, okay? I mean, I could just go on and on here. But she is also a beautiful lady, a beautiful mother, and her family. I was sharing the family picture with Karen, and she goes, what a gorgeous family. So you're really truly blessed. So I guess I'm going to kind of just, I want to talk to you as a in the medical profession.
Right.
Do you think, and this is just an honest question, do you think that depression is more predominant today than it was 20 years ago?
No, not at all. I think that we are, I don't think we're in, but we're at least entering a phase or the world where we can acknowledge depression and anxiety. It's always been there, but in all of our communities, individually and collectively, it's not okay to have something going on in your brain, which, by the way, is the most important bodily system that we have. Without your brain, your heart doesn't beat. Without your brain, your kidneys don't function. Without your brain, you don't know when to breathe. Without your brain, you don't have hormones. And so I often wonder, why is it that the most important organ that we have is so controversial? It's so controversial. Somehow we have always been taught that, oh, if something's wrong, and it may have something to do with the way you think, that, oh, you're nuts, you're crazy, you're weak, you know, you have to ignore that, you have to pray that away, you have to focus that away. Somehow you can control that, not recognizing that it's a real bodily system or real function of our system, just like every other organ. And so you can't think hypertension away or high blood pressure away or sugar away, or you can't think those things away. So how do we get to a place where it wasn't okay and we thought that we could think it away? But I'll confess, even now, today, in my own family, my own community, it's just not something that you can talk about really or discuss. People don't like to admit it. They don't like to recognize it in other family members. And so sometimes out of desperation, when I'm talking to family members or close friends, I go, listen, if you can't understand anything else, I want you to understand this. You know, pray, focus, but take your pill in the privacy of your kitchen and keep your medical history private. Keep that private. There's a way to kind of, if you want it to be private, you can keep it private. But by not acknowledging it, you're not keeping it private.
Good. That's good.
You are sharing your anxiety with the world. You're going out and telling everybody, I have anxiety.
Right.
If you're horribly depressed and you're not addressing it in non-medicinal ways, medicinal ways, therapeutic ways, you are telling everybody. You know, I'm depressed, not to mention what you're doing to yourself and your family. So if your goal is that you don't want this shared, well, let's do something about it. Take the pill in the privacy of your kitchen, go see your therapist in private. You know, do all of that in private. But address it. But I think we first need to sort of get it out there, which is, I guess, what we're going to talk about today is, well, what is it, and how can I recognize it, and how do we address it overall? So
I love that. I love that, as far as, because a lot of times what happens, especially in the Christian community, they go, oh, well, you know, you don't need to take that medication, because if you take that medication, then, you know, you're not trusting God. And that is so bunk, because, you know, if you have high blood pressure, you're going to take that pill.
Right. Since when?
Right.
You know, is that right? And so sometimes, you know, when I'm talking to a family about a very difficult topic, I go, hey, listen, you don't get to decide how your miracles come to you. I was we're going to sit there and talk about
That's good.
I'm like, you brought up God, okay, so I'm going to answer. So you don't get to decide how your miracles come to you. I'm a miracle. I'm a walking miracle. You know, God put me in a position, God granted me through His grace and His blessings. I wasn't supposed to go to the undergraduate school that I went to. I got there by the grace of God. Like I wasn't supposed to be a doctor. I am here by the grace of God. I call myself, I'm the 4% girl. I represent 4% of the United States.
Wow.
You know, there are 4% of me in my specialty, with me being a minority, with me being female, I'm 4%. So if I am your miracle sitting here and God is using me as a vehicle to help you, you don't get to who says that you get to decide how the miracles come to you?
That's good.
Yeah,
You don't kind of get to dictate that. And I think we need to check ourselves sometimes because we're trying to control how the miracles come. And so you have to be open. So your faith should be a given. Your spirit of hope should be a given. Your prayers should be a given. Okay, it's there. Don't let that go.
Right, right.
But then what else are you doing? So I think that especially those of us who are really focused and centered in our lives with our faith and with God,
that's good.
you have to remember that part. You don't get to decide.
And I love what you said about I love it. We don't get to decide
No.
how our miracle comes.
That's right.
And one of the things I think that we need to remember and remind ourselves of is you might be sitting right next to your miracle.
That's right.
Wow.
That's right.
That's
Because
good.
we need each other.
Right.
God intended it that way.
Right.
So you're sitting next to a miracle today.
That's right.
You might be sitting next to your miracle, what
Right.
you need.
Right.
You know, so I believe that that's the way God designed it. And I might have a word for you that is going to help set you free.
Right. And the miracle of medical science.
Right.
When things happen in a laboratory, when all of these things come together, it's almost like the heavens kind of open up and it's timed just right.
Right.
Well,
Wow.
God did that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Put that person in
That's
that
right.
position with that other person in that place at that time. So if that comes in the form of now this medical science, this
That's
miracle
right.
is now a pill for you that now helps you with a condition or something that other people would have struggled with otherwise,
Still a miracle.
it's still a miracle.
I love
right?
it, yeah.
It's still a miracle.
Yeah, you know, and that's the interesting thing about it being a counselor and a therapist is the cognitive thing that goes on, how you think is so vitally important because there's no solution just in one of these areas. You know, I mean, some people say, well, we all want to put it on one wheel.
Right.
Instead of using all four wheels to roll it, you know, we always want to say, well, if you take medication, or well, if you just ride on that wheel of prayer, you just do your wheel of prayer. You know, I have to honestly say that when people come to me and I begin to listen to them as a therapist or a counselor, one of the first things I do is I ask them, have you seen your medical doctor? And they'll go, well, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm thinking, okay, you know, maybe not. You know, the reality is, but let the doctor define that. Let the physician, you know, because this is always my question. I didn't go to medical school, and did you? You know, asking that person.
Right.
And we want to self-diagnose. We want to say, oh, well, if I do this or if I do that, then that's all I need to do and I'll feel better.
Right.
But depression is much deeper than what we feel.
It's so much deeper than that. And so there are just a couple of concepts I want to sort of address first. One is, I call it the common denominator checklist. So when you go through things in your life, your job, your family, your relationships, your general happiness, are things going kind of the way that you want them to go? Are you having issues with people across the board, places across the board, things? You know that common denominator. Do you know what that common denominator is?
It's
you.
Oops.
Right?
Right,
Yes.
right.
Something isn't wrong with everybody
Everybody
else.
else. Yeah,
Like
I love
there's
that.
something going on with you. And then many times, unfortunately, when there's a loved one, that's trying to reach out to say, hey, we're very quick to sort of dismiss that person
Push 'em
who's
away.
reaching out and trying to help us. No, something's not wrong with me. Something's wrong with you. But just that common denominator list. But in medical school, the one thing that left an incredible impression on me was the hormone sort of system in endocrinology. And I had a small panic attack because there are a lot of them. And I remember looking at them and just being so overwhelmed because with each hormone, there's called a feedback system. You know, when one is low, the other one goes higher.
Okay.
And then they're sort of all lined up almost like dominoes. And so the feedback system, meaning that they're all connected, and there's a curved arrow. And so when you look at all of the hormones, there's a curved arrow going this way and a curved arrow going this way with every hormone that's there.
Wow.
So that if you are deficient in estrogen, there's another hormone that's going to go up to sort of make up for that. And there's another hormone that's going to come down when that one goes up. It's a whole feedback system. So that even, let's use, for example, you know, we're all getting older. And
Maturing.
So maturing.
Yes, I like that.
Yeah, and so things are changing. And so what happens to the serotonin, the dopamine, the epinephrine that my brain needs to see things the way they are, to respond to things the way that I used to process things? I need those hormones. So when my other hormones are changing, what happens to those hormones? So if something else is off for a real, let's say medical reason, a real life reason, the real medical hormones, right, that are in your brain are also going to be thrown off. So there are real medical explanations. You know, we have, they're not huge studies, but there are some studies addressing vitamin deficiencies. So if you have a vitamin B12 deficiency, a vitamin B6 deficiency, a folate deficiency, a vitamin D deficiency. And I just want to point out too, that I just threw out all those vitamins. Everybody here, I'm sure that your vitamin D levels are not perfect.
Right.
Right.
My vitamin B12 levels are not perfect. My folate levels are not perfect. We were discussing earlier what we had for breakfast. There was not a lot of folate there. Right? There was not a lot of B12 there necessarily.
Right.
And so when those things are thrown off for whatever reason, if it's that you're not getting enough sunlight, is it that you have some other health condition that is now throwing it off? Is it that you're entering menopause, or you're postmenopausal, or you're now a man and your testosterone levels are down? Like whatever it is, sometimes those other hormone levels can be thrown off. And so clinical depression is a real diagnosis. And anxiety, you know, so many people don't want to say I have depression, I just have anxiety.
Yeah.
And that can be a manifestation of depression. And it's so interesting how people handle that. You know,
Right.
my mom, you know, would rather take a pill that is potentially addictive, you know, every 4 to 6 hours for her anxiety, instead of, you know, kind of acknowledging and taking something that's not addictive, that controls her anxiety or depression all the time, but would never want to admit that there's any element of depression there. When it's a medical issue, when she has other health issues.
Right. Right. Right.
So there are real medical reasons for this, and starting with your primary care provider is the place to start. But then typically you want to involve someone who has a specialty in that area.
Right.
So a psychologist, a psychiatrist. You know, I don't go and talk to the psychiatrist about my, you know, ocular or eye issues.
Right.
You know, I go to the ophthalmologist or the optometrist. And so when I have questions that are related to anything from a psychiatric standpoint, ADHD, depression, anxiety, whatever it is, well, then I should go and talk to that person. So a primary care physician is a great place to start, but you have to involve those other specialties. So real medical science here. It's a real issue.
Yeah, and it's not something that is just you're going to wish away or is going to just go away. You know.
Oh no! So there's like this public service announcement. I wish I could kind of tell everybody where to go to see it, and I'll maybe find it after the show and we can try to share it. But it's a little video, and it shows someone who breaks their leg. And the approach to them is the way that people approach depression. You can think your way through this. Oh, come on.
broken leg.
Let's focus. Let's just really focus. Meanwhile, the person's leg is like kind of literally broken in half. Oh, you know, yeah. Or it's, you know, someone who really needs insulin.
Right. I love it. I love it.
And, you know, they're going into a hypo or hyperglycemic coma, and they're like, wake up. Think hard. We can get through this. And it just kind of highlighted how ridiculous that
Pick yourself up. Pick yourself
yeah,
up with your
yeah,
bootstraps.
I have to tell you, personally, I was dealing with some seasonal depression. And I'm married to a physician. And he was telling me, this is why it kind of tickles me, but he was telling me, okay, honey, you can do this.
See?
It was like that old pick yourself up by your bootstrap.
Yes.
In his dictionary, there's no such thing as depression.
Yes.
You know, so you're gonna be all right.
Right.
What do you have to be depressed about?
Right.
You're a woman that has this.
Right.
You're a woman that has that.
Right.
You have everything, and you have me.
Yeah.
Right.
And you have me. What else could you possibly want?
Right.
And I just decided, you know what? I'm going to have to do something to help myself.
Right.
Right.
And
But
when
that
I-
speaks volumes, right?
Yes.
That,
Yes.
Because that's our historical kind of reference. And even as a physician, like that's kind of where we're, kind of coming from. Oh, come on, let's just
Yeah.
kind of, pull this together. But you do need to see your physician, because even though your husband is a physician, right? There's a totally different relationship.
Yeah, the dynamics.
The
is different.
dynamic is
Yeah.
completely different.
It's
So
not
when
gonna
he's
work.
sitting in that room, talking to a patient, then the clinical thing, kind
Clicks
of
on.
clicks on, and we really do, address these things as real. It's a diagnosis.
And in talking about women and maturing and that thing, I went through 2 years of severe depression.
Oh, yes,
Okay, and I had nothing to be depressed. There was not anything that was wrong in my life,
Right.
and I wanted to just in the
Your
morning.
body was changing.
I just wanted to put
Yeah.
the sheet over my head in the morning and just try so desperately to go to sleep.
Right.
Because that would be the only time that I could actually get out. Because in depression, you have physical pain.
Yes.
You have, everything hurts.
Everything.
Your head hurts, your
Nothing
neck.
is right.
Nothing is right, and everything you see in your life is completely out of focus.
Right.
Your husband can walk through the room and he doesn't love me.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, it has nothing to do. He was just going
The
from
poor
kid.
dude, the poor guy was just walking through the room.
And he doesn't love me.
Oh,
He doesn't
yes.
care about me.
Yep. I had
He's
to
using
apologize
me.
for a lot of that. Yeah.
He's using me and all that. Our perception is so broken.
Yeah.
And we see everything. They used to lock women up.
That's
Yes.
right.
I know.
And at the turn of the century, when they would go
That's right.
through menopause or the change of life, because they would become so wacky that they would put them in institutions
Right.
and institutionalize them. And the reality is that this is so fixable.
It is so fixable. And so since you're bringing up like things that just happen naturally, tell this couple of quick stories. I can remember when I was much, much younger, having the impression that 30-year-old women were very angry and mean.
That's sad.
I just knew that there was a significant difference between the 20-year-old in general group. And I was like, what is up with that? Like, it was like and as they approached middle age, I went, women, I was like, is life that bad? You know what I think it really...
You don't want to get old.
Yeah, I don't want to get old. I really do believe that it's related to like a hormonal
it
change,
is.
and
Oh,
then
it is.
there's a whole manifestation of anxiety. I've been depressed and have had anxiety and lots of issues, and it was so unexpected.
Right.
Like I just didn't. In retrospect, it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. Like I never anticipated that I would have felt that way. I had no idea. And the first time I remember feeling that way and not being able to kind of correct it or pull myself together or pray my way out of it was my dad told me, and only me, that he had prostate cancer. And I don't know if it was just that was so heavy for me because he was my person, or because I was boxed in, because I couldn't talk to anyone like in the family about it. And I was in my early 20s, but I could not correct that. Like I could not fix that by myself. I had to go talk to someone, and I went to talk to my doctor, and she gave me a little depression, I guess, checklist or whatever. And she just put it down, and she looked at me and said, how are you functioning every day? Like, how is that happening? And I didn't know. So how often do we just not even know
Right.
that we're in that situation? You're in the trenches and you just don't know.
Right. And what is the question that I hear so often is, what's wrong with you? Oh my gosh.
Right.
Don't ask that person what's wrong with them when they're in that darkness, when they're in that pit, because they don't know. They think it's real.
But then that sort of brings up the question, well then, well, what do you do? That's kind of hard, right? So when someone is in that pit or in that, well, what do you do? I think try to find ways to see if they can get some help or talk to someone
Absolutely.
who's not tied directly to them, maybe.
I agree.
You know,
That's
get
a
to
good
your
idea.
doctor, get to a counselor, get to a therapist, get to your pastor, get to someone so that you can at least start to kind of acknowledge it. It's hard to know what to do.
And
Right.
that's so good, because don't stay alone.
That's right.
See, that's the number one thing that we
Isolation.
do. We isolate when we're in that place of feeling
Yeah.
despair or darkness. Then we say, well, you know, I don't want to be around people. I make people uneasy, or whatever. We go through that.
Right.
But in reality, what we do need is we do need those sounding boards. We do need those mirrors in our life, because
Absolutely.
our lives are filled with mirrors. You're a mirror, you're a mirror, you're a mirror. Everybody's looking in a mirror. And so I'm gonna wrap up this first show with, I'm gonna turn to Christy. I'm gonna put her on the spot, because when we first started planning this, Christy made, this is Christy Grannon, and she made some comments to me, because she takes my instruction and she goes to the mat with it, and she starts taking it apart, and so what was the thing that you came back to me going,
Well, I was really just, when she talked about depression, you know, I thought about it in my own life, and I said, I go through bouts of depression. You know, I didn't really realize, I love what you said, the anxiety. I dealt with a lot of anxiety, but I never related it to depression, you know. And I wouldn't say that I deal with the medical side of depression where I was on medication or anything, but just day-to-day life, going through these bouts of depression. And I thought to myself, if I'm going through this as a Christian woman who is in the Word, I'm searching God, I'm praying, I'm doing all those things, then what's going on with the rest of the world that
Yeah.
doesn't even know the Lord? You know, what's going on with people, I mean, men and women all over. So this, to me, was just an amazing topic, and I really wanted to go deep with it, and just everything that you've been talking about, that was one of the things, like I was one of those people, you know, well, just pray about it, and just seek the Lord about it. And I realized that it's way deeper than just praying or seeking the Lord. So this has just been an amazing topic. I can't wait to hear more.
yes.
You know what? There just something just hit me with your words. It's when we're depressed or anxious, we are all medicating. It just depends on what was your medication of choice.
Wow.
Come on.
That's
So
good.
is your medication of choice going to be prayer and God and seeking your physician and getting something, you know, from a therapeutic standpoint, a medical standpoint, and tying all of those things in together and maybe doing it in a healthier way?
Right.
Are you medicating by staying at home and throwing the covers over your head and not interacting with your family, or, you know, using your family as therapists and going off on everybody around you?
Right.
Are you
So
self-medicating
true,
with
so true.
alcohol, drugs,
Yes.
or whatever? You know, there's,
Yes.
oh, you are medicating.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
We're all medicating, but what is your medication of choice?
That's
Right.
good.
Right.
Yeah.
That's good.
And that's, you know, that's what I want everybody to hear. I know you've all identified with some part, and we've got another show coming up, part 2 of this, that we're going to continue with. But I want you to understand that this is there's no shame in this.
That's
I
right.
want everyone to come out of the shadows, okay? I want you to come out. It's okay. You can come out of the shadows of hiding behind something's wrong with me. You know, that whole lie that we believe, we put ourselves in that sack, and basically we dry up and die. But we've got to come out of the shadows, and there is hope, there is joy, there is a renewing of life that can take place in your life. You are not left to live out your days in this darkness. And you know, I just want to shake you, if I could just say, you know, it's okay. It's going to be okay. Don't beat yourself up anymore. Don't. And if there's someone that you're living with that is struggling with this, you know, really, really get them, if they can just listen to a portion of this show, I know that it will bless them. So you can contact us at talktodrbaker@gmail.com. You can send in your text questions, and there's also a number on the bottom of the screen that you can text us. And if we get this during the show and we're live, we will do our best to answer that. All right. God bless you, and I hope you're back with us shortly. All right. Yay. Welcome to Wisdom Network Live. I'm so glad that you've taken the time to check us out online and also to sign up for our Women Wisdom Network Live YouTube channel. So you'll be able to catch all of our programs on there in the near future. These are things that are going to really be life changers for you, and we really want to deal with current events. Wisdom, Women Wanting Wisdom is an organization that is behind Wisdom Network Live. It's kind of the founding of Wisdom Network Live, and we spend our lives, our passion, my passion, is to empower you, to encourage you, and to enlighten you, to be everything that God made you to be. And He has so much for all of us. It's not just some of us. You say, well, I'm not as smart as this one. I have my brother smarter than me. That's a bunch. You are designed, you matter, and you are vital to every person that your life touches, because you are created by God, and God doesn't just create for no reason. He has a purpose in your life. And so my passion is to talk about the issues of life, because life is messy today, and there's so many things that go on in our society that can be life-shattering, they can be tragic, they can be unexplainable. I mean, we see it every day in the news. And, and really diet the news. You don't have to watch 24/7 news, because that'll make you just want to, jump out off your bed. I mean, it just, just makes you nuts. So you got to choose to live in that positiveness and that hope-filled environment. So today, I have some great people here with me on the show, and it is Karen Harris from Austin, Texas. Give Karen a hand. She came in yesterday, and she sits on the Governor's Council for Women's Issues in Texas. She was appointed by the Governor of Texas to talk, to research, to explore, and to educate women's issues in the state of Texas. And so thank you, Karen, for being here.
Always my pleasure.
Awesome. And then we have Christy Grannon here, and Christy is she's my buddy, my partner, but she's my team player, and I'm getting the opportunity, the awesome opportunity to mentor her and train her. And she is a fireball. And all of us need someone to create that friction, to polish us, and she does that for me.
Yeah.
So give Christy a hand today. She's a treasure in my life. She's a gift from God.
Amen.
And then on this very end is my special friend and guest is Dr. Tammy Singleton. And she is brilliant. She is a brilliant person. And I had the privilege of meeting her almost over 10 years ago.
Oh, well over.
Well over 10 years ago. I remember the day she walked in and we met. And I had no idea that our lives would stay connected through all these years.
Blessings.
So thank you for being here. And so if you haven't seen our first show on depression, God Help Me, I'm So Depressed, please go back and watch that, because it's a real setup for this one that we're going into. And I'm going to kind of start off, and then I want y'all to jump in, Dr. Singleton, on the facts that, this is something that we live in a society today that predisposes us to stress. Mm-hmm. Okay, you and I had a conversation about this. I don't know, if a couple of years back, we were on the phone with each other playing phone tag back and forth, and she's a physician, a doctor. She's on call. She deals with some amazing stuff, and she's a teacher. She travels the world, and but she said something to me on the phone. She said, Kathy, she said, people text me and they want an instant
response,
wow. And
email. Email too.
Email too,
they
yeah. And if you haven't answered it in an hour or two, they'll send you an email or they'll text you. If they've sent you an email and you've not responded to the email, then they'll text you going, did you not get the email that I sent you? And it's changed the whole face of medicine.
It has.
And I think it's changed the whole face of all of our lives, even our children.
Everything.
And we live in that pressure cooker. We're in a pressure cooker all the time. So my question is, because we touched on that in our last session, and as far as the panel that we fill in working with people that have depression as a marriage and family therapist, one of the panels that we look for is the anxiety, the things that heighten anxiety. So depression is 65% anxiety. You know,
very
when you get to the depression part, you're on the bottom side of depression, but the anxiety is almost like the manic part where you're solving, you're fixing, and that creates the adrenaline, and we get hooked on the adrenaline. So kind of shoot back at me. I know I threw a lot at you there, but go for it.
You know, I guess I want to start off by saying no one is exempt from this. You know, this affects everybody. So sometimes, you know, you look around the room or you look around the building and you think, I'm the only one, you know, or I'm going through this, but she looks great, or, you know, he looks fine, or, you know, other people aren't suffering through this. And so sometimes someone walks into my office or I have an encounter with someone and it's a very difficult one, and I remind myself, I go, I don't know what's going on in that person's life right now. I don't know what they suffered through this morning, but there are expectations, like, of all of us. And that's, I think, where that sort of anxiety portion of some of our depression or the things that we're dealing with, it comes in. When I walk into my office or when I walk into the hospital, they want Dr. Singleton.
Period.
But you're not a human.
Oh, no. They want, need, and expect Dr. Singleton to show up, and I need to be on.
That's right.
And so it doesn't matter if that morning my husband acted crazy with me for some reason I don't understand. It doesn't matter if 20 minutes after that my mother called me, you know, with something that completely, you know, upset me. It doesn't matter if after that happened with Damon and then my mother called, my teenager is sitting in the car and then said something and I totally went off. You know, it doesn't matter if for the past 3 nights, if I haven't slept well
Wow.
for one reason or another, and now I'm running on, you know, empty physically, you know, that doesn't matter. It also doesn't matter if I'm just emotionally, you know, kind of running on E, and I dealt with, you know, all of that.
Right.
And when I pulled up into the building that day, I sat there almost putting my lipstick on crooked, as I call it. You know, because you know what I mean? Like, you have those days. And I'm sitting in my car trying to collect myself. And just as I'm sitting in my car trying to collect myself, I'm getting a text message, an email, my phone rings. I can't even get out of my car. I'm sitting there for 30 minutes. But when I walk into the building, they expect Dr. Singleton to show up. So there are so many things that are on all of us, you know, all of the time. And this anxiety is there. Can you hide it all the time? Can you cover it up all the time? Most of the time, the answer to that is no. You think that you're kind of covering, you think that you're functioning, and we're not. And so that whole 65% of depression is, you know, manifested as, you know, anxiety is really real. But I've shared all of that to just make sure that you know that if you're suffering through some of that, you are not the only one.
That's good to
You're
know.
not the only one.
But we weren't created to be that. We weren't created.
No, we
To
were
live
not
like that.
created to deal with all that we're dealing with. It's really borderline ridiculous, to be honest with you.
Where we are today.
Where we are
Yes.
right now is really borderline ridiculous. And the expectations of, like, the instant response, the expectations of, I mean, I have family members who don't even completely understand email or text messages or anything else, but then there's still these expectations even placed on those people. It's just, everything is instant, right now, and it piles on everything. And I don't even know if we all recognize how it impacts us or how it affects us. Like, I just sort of mentioned, and I have tangible things that I can touch, you know, and feel, but everyone is going through something on some level that is sort of being, you know, dumped on, or spillage or overspillage from this, you know, very instant, I need it now, I want it now, you know, kind of society.
So I'm just gonna, why, and I'm guilty of this. Why don't we know how to shut down?
You know, and I'm going to answer that note saying that I sometimes have difficulty, you know, that whole that shutdown myself. I think that it's about, at the end of the day, not knowing how to set boundaries
That's good.
or establish boundaries.
That's right.
And sometimes we get caught up in the expectations of us. And not, so, like, if I ask you to do something and you tell me, no, you know, I'm sorry, I can't do that. My first response is, wow, okay, well, she can't do that. Oh. But then after that, I actually admire it. You know, I kind of take a step back and I go, I wish I could have set a boundary like that for myself. So it's recognizing. I started doing something called sleep sanitation recently, because when you don't sleep, it makes you
Crazy.
a little cuckoo. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
right,
feel,
right.
and then that whole
Exactly.
anxiety thing comes up because your
Exactly.
hormones are all thrown off when you just
Right.
don't sleep.
Right.
So sleep sanitation came up for me, and sleep sanitation is one of those things where my husband, who's in TV, who wants to have the TV on so he can, you know, watch the news, hear the news, like whatever. I'm like, no. I walk in, it's time for bed. Click. You know, off goes the TV. When I would do work or something just before bed, no, I'm not going to bring it in my bedroom. The place where I sleep is not a place where I'm going to do any work. I need to get up and go to the table, you know, or get up and go
Wow.
somewhere else, because that should be like a sacred space. That's like establishing a boundary.
Yes, it is.
Well, and you know, we have those talking things in our house all the time. Okay, because I live with my husband. He'll walk in a room and he sometimes he doesn't even turn on the light. He turns on the TV.
Yes.
Right.
And I'm like going, seriously? You know, I mean, but so we live with this digital flow inside of us all the time, and I wonder what we're saying to our children, because even this morning when we were driving in, I told Karen, because I was like frantic, making sure I had this and had that, and I had my, you know, electronics, and I had my blah, blah, blah. And I turned around to Karen, I said, Karen, you know, if my parents were here today and they saw the way I lived, they would think I had lost my mind.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they got up in the morning and they had breakfast, they talked. I mean, my brothers came to my kitchen, even as adults, with my mom and dad, every morning. They had coffee together.
Yeah, and they
you know,
talked.
And they talked before they ever went into the world. Oh, Lord Jesus.
We're not doing
We
that.
don't. I mean, I raised my kids and I took them to school, but sometimes, you know, I have more attention on them now. But today, sometimes Jerry and I ride in the car together, and he's driving and I'm on my device, my iNess, whatever, you know, trying to do work, and it's like we never shut down.
Right.
And we're going to fry our brain. We do fry our brains into that point that we end up in a dark place.
Right.
Yeah, don't they say that there's a certain amount of time that you should get off electronics before you go to bed
Yeah.
to allow your
Yeah.
brain to dial down, and
Yeah, you should.
the electronics in the room, like when the lights go off, if you get a text in the middle of the night, that's kind of waking you up also?
Yes, I'm just gonna stick with that theme of, I just think it's about trying to set a boundary. You know, it's at dinner time is hard when we're living in this, and we don't realize how this is contributing to our being disconnected and, you know,
Wow.
anxiety and depression and all of that. So I go, listen, I told my husband, I said, our schedules are crazy. So, but whenever it's possible, even if it ends up only being 3 or 4 times a week, if it's only 2 times 1 week or whatever it is, we have to sit down as a family for dinner, and people not eating in shifts. There's no TV on, there are no devices at the table. It only takes like 20 or 30 minutes. We're not sitting there for a couple of hours, you know, eating. Can we have that one 20-minute time period to kind of dial in? Believe it or not, that dialing in and that connection.
It's a good term.
It's
It
a
is a
good
good
time, and it helps everybody. Everybody has a little bit of that feel-good hormone. We have an opportunity to kind of dial in. So it's the little things that we can do. I think it's hard to do. But if you're conscious of it and you try to live deliberately and do it deliberately, well, maybe you'll get some of it in. My grandmother, every morning, I remember asking her, "What are you doing in there?" You know, every morning her bedroom light will come on at 5 o'clock in the morning, you know, and sometimes if I was going to the bathroom, I see the light on. And occasionally I open the door and she couldn't kneel anymore, but she was sitting with her Bible open.
Yes.
Everything's off and quiet, and she was reading. And she
Good.
spent that time before she left her room, before she started making breakfast, that was her quiet time. She established that boundary. That was her hedge of protection, you know, sort of for herself.
Yep.
So I think we have to work hard as women to make sure we're natural caretakers. We're taking care of everybody else first. Our lives are busy, electronic world, but we have to have those boundaries and that hedge of protection, I think.
Absolutely.
I think also we have to take courage and be brave about setting boundaries.
Right.
Because what has happened to me on occasion is intimidation has come against me. You know, you're sitting at the dinner table, and we can be in a fine restaurant, and phones will come out and they'll be put on the table. I refuse to do that.
Right.
Right.
And I refuse to be intimidated
Right.
because I won't do that.
Right.
So you really do have to take a stance and make a choice not to be sucked into all of that. And as we're talking about wisdom, to be able to exercise wisdom even in your own home can take courage.
Yes.
It can.
And not people pleasing, because that was one of the things that I would do. Lots of times, I didn't want to let anybody down. So if anybody asked me to do something,
Oh, boy.
I did it, and then the next thing you know, I'm stressing out because I can't get the things
You're doing too
done
much.
that I needed to do. So
Yeah.
not worrying about people pleasing.
Right.
And again, that goes back to boundaries, setting those boundaries and knowing what you can do and what you can't do. But one of the things I was going to, mention earlier, I remember a few years ago, I was suffering with major headaches and neck injuries, and I mean, I went to doctor after doctor after doctor. I mean, MRIs, you name it, and nobody could find anything wrong with me. And finally, I went to one doctor, and she said, "You're stressed out."
Yep.
And so it is true. Like you really do have to go to your doctor to find out first. But anxiety and stress and how that played such a role. I mean, I really thought something was seriously wrong with me. Like,
Well, something was.
well, you're right. That's right. But that's
So cute.
well, we don't think stress and anxiety and depression is something serious all the times,
It's lethal.
It
It
so
is.
is.
It's lethal.
So we joke sort of, it's like a doctor joke sometimes. Like we're like, yeah, I think my cortisol level is probably 50 right about now. It's a doctor joke. And so cortisol, we were discussing a little bit earlier about that hormone chart of mine that I told you
Yes.
gave me some anxiety because when one goes up, another one goes down, another goes up, another one, and this whole feedback thing. So let's use your example.
Okay.
Make it medical. So when you're stressed and you have to do something, a hormone is released. You can call it adrenaline, you can call it epinephrine, but it's released, and every body system is turned on.
Oh, goodness.
And not just turned on, I mean cranked up.
Yep.
You can see that in the
Wow.
Your heart rate is
Wired.
cranked up. Your breathing is cranked up. Your pupils are dilated.
Wow.
Your muscles are turned on. Like everything is cranked up and turned on, all from this whole like adrenaline, kind of
Burst.
release. It's a big burst. Just think about it logically. How much of that do you think you can release chronically all the time before you sort of burn it out?
Right. That's what
Well,
happened.
when that happens, some other hormone has to step in or kind of pay for it.
Okay.
Your muscles are now like so overstimulated. They're like, so now your calcium is working and your potassium is working, and now you have a headache and your muscles are not going to be great. This is awful. So Then you have it's awful. I'm telling you,
It is.
Trust me, it's awful. And this probably happens to me like on a daily basis too. When I say that cortisol thing, so then my cortisol levels are going to be, up high, like more in a permanent way. That's natural body steroid. Do you know what happens when your natural body steroid is high?
What happens?
You put on weight.
So that explains.
Around I know I'm saying it's true. All around your belly. Your estrogen is affected, your testosterone is affected, your serotonin is affected, all in hormones here, your dopamine, your thyroid.
Everything.
I'm telling you, this hormone list is all like this. It's feedback arrows. And so it's all tied in.
Wow.
It is
Wow, that
all
is just
tied
amazing.
in. So if you're really anxious, depressed, and we talked a little bit about people who have fibromyalgia and you can't convince me that is not often kicked off by stress. What else happens when you're stressed out? What happens to your immune system? Your immune system is going to be compromised. When your immune system is compromised, all kinds of things can go down, including cancer.
It's like it opens a door for all these
It
things
opens a
to
door
come
for
in.
all of these things. So anxiety, depression, all of those things are so interconnected and tied into everything else. So
the stress,
Oh my gosh,
the
yeah.
stress and the anxiety are almost like kissing cousins.
Oh, they are kissing cousins.
They're like tied into each other because we trump ourselves on having multitasking. I mean, we're
Right.
like, oh man, we can do it all, and we really weren't created to be
weren't.
doing that. And so it's like we're predisposing ourselves to jam ourselves up.
Yeah.
I tell myself slowly killing myself. I'm like, I have to establish that boundary, feeling guilty, intimidated, sometimes, man, there's no problem. I need to go work out. Most of the time, a woman, you have a gazillion other things before you are going to stop and take care of yourself.
That's right.
You feel guilty if you stop to take care of yourself.
Because the world's going to fall.
Slowly killing, slowly killing yourself.
In the World Health Organization, they estimate that depression will be the second highest medical cause of disability by the year of 2030.
See, that's a statistic, but I think that we are already there.
We're already there.
We are already there.
Yeah.
How many of the illnesses that we're seeing today are all, directly related
To that. So one of the things, and I know we've talked about it, but these are three things that I'm going to kind of like put out there for you. How do you overcome this? There's got to be a practical, if you're not depressed, yay, okay, that means you're working out and you're doing the right things. But there is, depression is in the parking lot doing push-ups. It's waiting to take you down, okay? As soon as you let your guard down.
Yeah.
But this is the reality, and I want you to understand that these are coping things that you've got to learn, and this is against our society. But number one is we have to release, we have to give up having to be right.
That's good.
And that is part of the stress because all of us have to be right. And we see it in our society everywhere. It dumps it dumps the stress into every situation when you have to be right at the job, right at the work. You just need to just be you, just do you, and listen from behind your boundaries sometimes and hear what is going on, because there may be an answer that's coming to you. Wisdom may be knocking at your door through a friend or through a colleague or through someone that God has put in your life. And I think this is really, that's number one. And number two is you've got to put the right value on things.
That's really good.
We put an equivalent value on everything. We have the same value on our job, or even some of us let our jobs have more value than our family.
Yikes. Yes.
Or, the most important, priority list is, God first. We need to have God. You've got to give God, you've got to honor God first. And you got to give him first place if you want
right.
things to go right with you. It says that things will go well with you. But the reality is this, is that, you know, the second thing has got to be, if you're married, it needs to be your mate. After God, it's your mate, and then your children, and then your covenant friends, those that you're in covenant with, and then your job. You know,
Wow,
I
that's
mean,
way down there.
That's way down there. But man, we've got
But
to.
that's not the action list.
That's not the
the
action
action
list.
list.
You're right.
That's right. That's right. And so when our kids come to talk to us sometimes, and you know, we say, wait a minute, wait a minute. I'll be with you in a minute. Wait a minute. My granddaughter's 4 years old, and she'll come in, and if I'm checking something on my phone, she'll come in and she'll go, Grammy, you need to put that phone down. That's good. And I'm going like, okay, aye, Capitan. You know, I mean, I get it.
Yes.
But why is that? Is because literally it's standing between.
Oh, wow.
They can't see, you can't see me if, you know, I can't see anything if this is right in front of me.
Wow.
It blocks vision. And so we assign a value on everything is given the same amount of value, and we can't live that way. Our health is important. It's more important than our bottom line at the bank, okay?
Yes.
Because if we don't have our health, it doesn't matter how much money we got.
Right.
Have you met wealthy people that have no health?
Oh yeah.
And no happiness.
Yeah.
You know,
It's the great equalizer. You know, poor health. It's serious, it's real, but sometimes I think it's hard to do. All you can do is try to take it one step at a time.
That's right.
You know, try to set a realistic goal. Recognize that this is important for your children, your life, your family. It's the best gift you could give to your children or your family, especially when you're doing something to take care of yourself. So if you're recognizing that anxiety and depression is so interrelated and responsible for so many other things that we're dealing with, trying to take steps to take care of yourself, establish those boundaries, and it's going to mean something different for everybody. But when you were talking, there was something that sort of came to my mind. You know, there are those of us who are so caught up and on this hamster wheel, but there are some of us who are caught up and on this hamster wheel in other ways, and we're living someone else's truth.
Oh, wow.
We have people who are telling us that we're not good enough or that we're horrible. You know, my recent way of describing it is I want to write my own narrative. I want to produce my own narrative. I want to direct my own narrative, and I want to star in my own narrative. You know, it's not going to be something that's going to be done by someone else. And, you know, so if you're out there and you're living someone else's truth and someone else is telling you how horrible you are, that's a great place to start understanding how that shouldn't be you. Stop it. Put a stop to it. You know, sometimes when people are telling me things, I'll hear in my head, I'll go, you're not going to convince me that I'm something other than X.
That's right.
Good try. You're not going to convince me.
Not today.
And so, not today. And you reclaim that, because that's where a lot of anxiety and depression can kind of kick off and starts for a lot of people. And by the way, it's happened your whole life.
Yeah.
You know, it started in childhood. So if you're living that life, it happened to you when you were a kid, someone told you you were worthless, recognize that that's not you. That's someone else's narrative. Rewrite it. And start to kind of establish some boundaries.
Yeah.
wow.
Yes, that is
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Singleton. That is so powerful. And you know, there's a scripture in John 10:10. It says, "There's a thief that comes to steal, to kill, and destroy."
That's right.
And so we have to understand that we have to do the battle. We have to fight the battle. And I just don't know how much, I mean, I could keep you here for days on end, because I just love the ability that you have to make it understandable, to make it practical,
Yes.
and to bring it home into a context that we can all understand that it's not just one-dimensional.
No.
It's spiritual, it's physical, it's cognitive, it's environmental, our behavior.
Yes.
And but God has created us for great things. So if you have questions, please will you text them into or email us at talktodrbaker wisdomnetworklive@gmail.com, and there's also a phone number that you can see there at the bottom of the page, and you can actually text us your questions, and we will get to those questions on air in our next show. So thank you so much. We appreciate it, and God bless you, and smile. Life is
Yes.
good, and you matter.
That's right.
Wisdom Network Live. I am so glad that you have taken time to join us today. We are part of Women Wanting Wisdom, and Wisdom Network Live, this is our headquarters, and this is the place that we love to come and just deal with messy questions of life. And none of us got a perfect one, did we? None of us got a perfect family, none of us got a perfect life. But if we work together and we share the wisdom that comes to each of us during our journey, I think it strengthens us, it makes us stronger. We are stronger together. And so our topic is going to be is depression. Oh God, help me, I'm so depressed. And it's one of the articles and tapings that I did for the Times-Picayune when it was here in our city. And it was the #1 hit. I mean, people were calling from all over, not just in the New Orleans area, but they picked it up online. And I had people from Europe saying, you know, I've called out to God in the middle of the night going, God, help me, please, I'm so depressed. And so I think we've had a great part 1 and part 2 of this discussion with Dr. Tammy Singleton, who brought us, oh my gosh, so much incredible information and helpful insight into this disease that literally we're seeing. You know, it's almost like it's contagious in our society today, but worldwide. And so, so we're talking about depression. And so today I have Karen Harris that is with us from Austin. I always want to say San Antonio, Austin, Texas, and she sits on the Women's Council, appointed by the governor of Texas to deal with women's issues, health issues, education issues, life issues. And so I am so thankful that you're here today.
Yay!
Awesome, awesome lady. Filled with wisdom, filled with wisdom. And then I have Christy Grannon here, who is a powerhouse, and she is my fireball, the one that shines me. She shines me a lot. You know, you have those people in there that God brings into your life to help you search new answers to new questions, because that's the greatest way for us to learn. So please, she is one of the best teachers you will ever meet. Christy Grannon. Give her a hand, please. So thank you so much, Christy, for being here today.
I'm glad to be here.
And then I have here on the end my very, very dear friend, Dr. Teresa Harris, and she is a chiropractor here in the city of New Orleans, and it's Harris Sports and Chiropractic Clinic here in the Metairie area. Are you in Metairie? Is that correct? You're in Metairie. And so I brought you in today, and we're going to talk about this depression, and I'm going to kind of throw you a hot potato in the sense that we can become depressed doing what we love.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It happens to all of us, right? It's not. It doesn't mean just because you love something that it's gonna.
One of the things that happens with us from a stress standpoint is, just like was referenced on the other show, when we take in too much fight or flight, that's what we put our bodies in when we're all constantly doing something. You know, back when we were hunters and gatherers and we had a lion chasing us when we were trying to, you know, go get food for the family,
Right.
we burned off that cortisol running from the lion.
Right.
But now we sit and we're so sedentary, we don't burn that cortisol off.
Right.
But we keep adding more and more and more into our system. And so it can manifest itself in physical ways that we don't always think that's because of stress. But it can also manifest itself mentally that we don't think of as, oh, I love what I'm doing. I'm traveling. I'm going and speaking in these different places. I am enjoying everything I'm doing.
Right. Right.
But we're putting so much stress from even the things we enjoy doing because we're not resting.
So in your practice, you know, as a chiropractor, do people come to you because they're you know, I mean, I'm asking a question that I know the answer to. I carry my stress in my shoulders. I mean, I walk around like this, you know. And they come to you and they say, you know, I have a stiff neck or I have a stiff body. Is that because they're out of balance? Physically, emotionally, spiritually?
Yes, all of the above. I'd say 9 out of 10 people that I see, their symptoms are stress related.
Wow.
And
That's high.
that's manifested in physical pain. That's not because they had an injury that caused it.
Right.
It's because there's so much stress on their bodies and their hormones. People don't realize that cortisol, they hear the word cortisol in all these different commercials about take this pill, take that pill,
Right.
and everything. But they don't realize that cortisol is a hormone in our body.
Right.
And it can wreak havoc on us, physically and mentally. And one of the things that I see in my practice is, like you said, people say, I come in, I carry all my stress on my shoulders, I carry my low back, or, and whenever I hear that, I know that much of their symptoms are stress related.
Okay.
I also can see many people that come in my office that the stress has them depressed, just like fibromyalgia was mentioned earlier.
Okay.
I see so many people that come in that have fibromyalgia, and what happens is they have had some type of emotionally stressful event that has happened, or even sometimes a physically stressful event that happens, and it turns inward to their body.
Oh, wow.
And I think that's one reason it's been hard to kind of pinpoint fibromyalgia and categorize it and classify it somewhere,
Difficult to diagnose.
because they don't know where to put it. Well, that then also, when I see patients, many times the mental aspect, they come in and I just listen. Because sometimes that's what people need.
It's just there's a therapy for them to get it out.
Yes.
Because we hold it in.
Yeah.
And, I think that's what we make ourselves sick. I mean, we hold in a bunch of, I don't know, you've heard me say this a million times, and I'll say it again, but, the person I talk to the most is me.
Yes.
The person you talk to the most is you.
Right.
I mean, in your head. And the thing that's crazy is that you ask yourself questions and you answer them.
Yes.
Right? You answer your own questions. Like you had a question and you are going to be the source of everything, and that brings on that whole bottleneck that takes place in our lives, where the depression begins to foster and to set in. I know we talked about a testimony, and I think Karen was there, or we were all there in the room together, and that it can come instantly. The onset of depression, this one gentleman was talking about, he was out gardening one day, out in the sun, doing what he loved. He had just come home from doing what he loved as far as a profession. He came home and he was, digging in his flower bed, planting flowers and all that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden, it just hit him. And he had an anxiety attack, which he thought he was going to have. He was having a heart attack.
Yeah.
He went and called his wife, said, take me to the emergency room. They ran a panel of tests on him. He was fine. But the reality was, it was an immediate onset. And we always think of depression as being this thing that kind of like fog that kind of floats in. But sometimes it can be an instant onset of depression.
Well, and also people don't realize there's physical manifestations of depression. With this particular person, the physical part came on first before the mental part came on.
Right. That's right.
And so all of a sudden, they started having these symptoms that they could not figure out. They, went through a heart stress test. Everything was fine. Went through, all these different checklists. Oh, it's not Cushing's. It's not this. It's not that. And all these different diagnoses, all these different tests. You're like your perfect bill of health.
But it was all in here.
Well, but then what happens is one doctor said, you have adrenal fatigue.
Adrenal fatigue. Yes, yes, yeah. Okay,
You're
yeah.
running on adrenaline. And even though you love what you're doing, you are feeding yourself with so much adrenaline, and you're living off that adrenaline
Wow.
to the point where you're making yourself sick physically. And then it wasn't long that the mental part, same way, just and a flood came over them.
Right, right.
And so, just like the physical symptoms had a sudden onset, the mental symptoms had a sudden onset.
Right.
And it was just like a black hole.
And it wasn't going to go away. That was the thing that he said. He said, I thought, well, as soon as fast as it came on, that, fix. We love instant fixes in our society today. There's got to be a
Yes.
pill for it, or there's got to be something, doctor fix it, or or even we look to our family to make us happy.
Yes.
Instead of being happy within, we want the surroundings to make us happy, but on the inside, there's just this vacuum that's going on. There's so much that if you can give us just like one thing that that's really a treasure in this, because I think it's important that we grasp a hold of this.
Rest.
Rest.
Rest your body.
Wow.
It's good.
Rest it physically, rest it mentally. When I get home at night, my phone stays in my purse. I don't get it back out until I plug it in at night to go to bed.
Good for you.
I try to make sure that there's that little time carved out, even if it's a couple of hours,
Setting boundaries.
that I have nothing in front of me other than maybe a magazine to look at or just something to just let my mind rest. Let
So
my-
you can actually turn these off.
Yeah. Did you know
Yeah, they have an off
that
button.
have an off
they
button?
even have a permanent off button?
Wow. Yeah, so you can actually.
And you know
turn
what?
it
They
off.
need to rest too, in order to update.
Well, yeah, because even
And we
it tells-
need to rest in order to update.
Yeah, how many times
that's
does
good,
it go?
Teresa.
It goes haywire, and then we think, oh, well, let me turn it off.
Yeah,
Right, instead
yeah,
of just
let
shutting
it
it down,
reset.
because we need
And
to
that's
reboot.
what happens to our bodies. When our phone goes haywire, it's telling you, I've got too much going on.
Right.
Right.
When our bodies go into haywire, it's telling you to
Shut it all
shut it down.
Shut it down. Bring it all down.
Or it's going to shut down on you.
That's good.
Yeah, because that's depression. When that
Yes.
happens, when it shuts down on its own,
Yes.
you're in depression.
Yes.
You're falling in depression. Okay, well, we've had some questions come in. I'm excited. I'm excited. Yay. Thank you so much, Dr. Harris. Awesome.
Thank you.
Harris Sports and Chiropractic. If you need a good chiropractor, she's the best. I mean, beyond the best, the best. Thank you so much,
Thank you for
Dr.
having me.
Harris. Thank you. Okay. You ready, girls? Okay. Sometimes I say I'm overwhelmed. This is someone text this in, and they say a prayer. Is that connected to anxiety, depression? Let's see. Has to respond to thoughts of being overwhelmed. So does that cancel out the anxiety and depression? So when we start to pray, we lift up a prayer. Does it always make it just all go away?
Well, I can honestly say, because a friend of mine pulled my coattail a few years ago, and she said, Karen, she said, prayer and you alone, you can't do everything. And to some Christians, they are going, I can feel it. They're going, ooh, no, baby, prayer cannot do everything. We are made to need each other.
So being overwhelmed will lead us in to anxiety and depression. It's like that thing. I mean, the opening door for anxiety and depression if we don't deal with feeling overwhelmed.
And some of us do deal with anxiety, and we deal with it in prayer. And I am a proponent of prayer. You know that I am. That is something that I think keeps many of us out of physicians' offices and off of the psychiatrist's couch. But there are other things that we have to have in our lives to make sure that we are balanced. Prayer can't do it all.
Right.
And
Well, I mean, I agree also. I know for me, one of the things that gets me overwhelmed is those overwhelming thoughts. Just thoughts keep going in my mind. And I can pray, but that doesn't necessarily quiet the thoughts in my mind. So when I reach out to someone, when I reach out to a friend or to my pastor and crisis and say, this is what's going on with me, they can speak truth into my life and start helping me to combat the negative thoughts, the thoughts that are lying to me with the thoughts that are truth. And that sometimes can quiet me down with prayer. So that's what works for me.
Because you know what, in anxiety and being overwhelmed and in depression, do you notice that, and just this is an honest question, but do you notice that in any of those climates, there's not one faith-building, uplifting comment? It's not like when you're in depression, you don't ever hear, you are going to be okay.
Right.
You're going to. God has got His hand on your life. You're anointed. God is for you. He created you for a purpose. You don't ever hear that dialogue in your head when you are trapped into the depression and the anxiety and the overwhelming thing. It's almost suffocating.
Absolutely. I mean, when I'm in those bouts of depression, I'm hearing, you're worthless. You're never going to amount to anything. It's like, who do you think you are? I mean, we talked about, the incident with the last episode, and how immediately the enemy came in to tell me, what do you think you're doing? And so, I mean, again, that's when your friends and pastors and again, too, I don't want to discount the medications, and all that, because those are necessary at times. And so, it's okay to be a Christian who's taken medication. I mean, that's very important.
Okay. This was a great one, and then we're going to get to Mary. It says, I think I have anxiety or clinical depression, but I'm afraid to ask for time off from work to see a mental health professional. And, I've had people, and I say this, that have really, they won't even see, they'll seek professional help, but they are so secretive about it because they're so afraid they're going to lose their job or they're going to lose, and the reality is, honestly, I love what Dr. Singleton said, you are not alone. We are all, we have all had some level of depression, whether it was on a scale from 1 to 10. Some of us are a 1, some of us are a 3, and some of us go up and spike out at 8 and 10.
Right.
But, that the reality is that nobody is alone. You matter. And so, you're protected legally from any kind of ramifications from that.
Yes.
So don't worry about that fact that you can't go and see a professional because it would affect your job. And if they do, and it does cause you to have some kind of stir at work, you have legal covering as far as that's concerned.
Absolutely.
So, all right, Mary Santa Marina. Everybody give her a hand. We're so glad that she's here today. Thank you so much, Mary, for being here. You are a woman of wisdom, and you are filled with God's word. So I'm coming at you, okay, with this topic because I know your testimony. And I know that you grew up in a household where your mother struggled with mental health.
Yes.
And so why don't you just kind of give us a capsule of what you grew up in so everybody understands how it because if you have one person that's depressed in the house, what does it do?
Oh, it affects everybody.
It affects everybody.
the whole house.
So go ahead.
Well, my mother struggled with mental illness. She was really had a terrible bout with our whole childhood was chaos in a home where nothing was normal at all, nothing. And it affected us children. We had 4 girls, and it affected us in different ways. My sister Barbara quit talking. She didn't talk for a year when she was about 9 years old. She just quit talking. My daddy used to tell me all the kids would be playing, and he'd have to go find me because I would crawl up in a corner and go to sleep.
Wow.
And I think that was the way I dealt with it. Barbara dealt with it another way, and my other sisters dealt with it in their own way because we didn't know what a normal home was. We knew we weren't in a normal home. We knew this was not normal.
But
How
we
did you
didn't-
find that out? Because some people, we grow up a lot of times in a place, in a home where it's not normal, but we think everybody else lives in the same
Right.
thing that we live in, right, Christy?
Yes,
We've
yes.
talked about that. We thought everybody else lives in this, you
Right.
know. When did you find out that it wasn't like everybody else?
Well, I guess when I got a little bit older and would have friends, I knew that I couldn't have the friends at my house. I could
Okay.
not bring them in my house.
Okay.
There was no way. And I would maybe go to their house and they would sit down and eat and their mother would talk to them and they would interact and interact with a family that we didn't do. So I guess, you know, that's when I realized I don't even want anyone to come to my house
Yeah.
because I don't want them to see what we have in this house, you know. And so it was hard in a lot of ways because we couldn't invite people, our friends, to our home. I wasn't invited a lot in other homes, so I was kind of pushed away in school and everything because I didn't have that social.
So you felt isolated a little bit.
Yeah, I did, and that's why my daddy said I used to go sleep all the time, you know, because we couldn't interact with a family.
So you found a refuge. You told us, you shared with the team that you really found a refuge in this chaos that you're talking about at a certain place in your life that your dad took all you girls in. It was at church that became your family.
Yes, we became a church family. My daddy got saved, and when he got saved, he got saved. I mean, he got saved. And we were 4 little girls, and he drug us to church. You know, Mom usually didn't go, but he would. And it was so funny because we would get to church and we looked like rag dolls. I mean, we looked horrible. And we had a couple of ladies in our church. It was a Baptist church, and they would take us in the bathroom and comb our hair.
Because that was something your mother was not able to do.
Right. My mother was severely mentally ill. And at that time, they didn't have all the things they have today
Sure.
to combat mental illness. So she was left, even though she was on a lot of medication, and sometimes she could live at home, but she couldn't interact with you. She was a zombie, or else she was really way out there.
Well, you know, and the thing about it is, you know, when you have, it's a miracle that
Oh, it
all
is.
you girls,
Yes, it's a
you know,
miracle.
because you were genetically, I mean, you could have been predisposed to this,
Yes.
but God just came in, I think, and
Absolutely.
really just rescued all of you.
All 4 of us girls are normal.
Yeah.
And we all serving God, and we all love God and doing good work, you know.
But
it
there
is a
must have been
miracle.
there must have been times in your own life that you thought, am I going to be,
Right.
you know, is that going to be me?
Sure.
Because
sure.
we know so much about DNA now, and we know we are
Yes.
born with predisposed areas in
Yes,
our lives. But God just really did a miracle in this. I think it
did.
was a lot of your dad's prayers
I
too.
think, listen, my daddy brought us through it all. I mean, he prayed for his girls. He had a prayer list. He would go in the attic. He made a little room in the attic, and he had a prayer list.
Wow.
And after he passed away, my mom was always number 1 on his prayer list, but then his 4 girls.
Wow.
And I know that God answered his prayers and protected all of our minds
That's
from
amazing.
mental illness,
Wow.
because
Wow.
we should have been all really bad off, but
Yeah.
I know the prayers of my daddy.
Well, you know, and it's that whole component thing again. You know, we have the physical part of us, which
Yes.
can be broken.
Yes.
All right, we can have you know, a disease born. We can be born with a club foot. We can be born not able to speak or blind. I mean, we can be born with numerous amounts of things wrong with us. So we have that, you know, those neuro things that are there when we're born. But then
Yes.
there's also the, you know, and this is those 4 wheels that I'm talking about. You have to have, you know, the spiritual part of it.
Yes,
And the
that's so
behavioral
important.
part was the gap in yours. You
Yes.
know, it was almost like you had four things, and two of them were shaky. You know, because it could have been your DNA, and it could have been your behavioral, the environment you were growing up in. Because
Yes.
listen, some places that we grow up in can be depressing.
Yes,
You know,
yes,
it can be
yes.
depressing.
Yes.
But then, you know, there's those too. But then, you know, you can't throw out the fact that you have to have the cognitive instruction, which where God met you at
Yes.
church and really encouraged your mind. That's why it's so important to have your families
Yes.
take your families to church, go to church, get that
Yes.
spiritual component going, because that's that third wheel. You've got to have that spiritual component. And I've worked with medical doctors, I've worked with psychiatrists, and today, more so than ever, they're saying that this is a full meal deal. You can't just fix one area of your life and think it's all going to be okay. You know, life is going to be good. I'm fine. You know, it takes a whole component.
Yes, it
So,
does.
Mary, thank you so much for coming and bringing that. Because if there's anything that I tell couples and families, go to church. And look, I know churches aren't perfect. I get that. But you know, nobody at your office is perfect
No,
either,
that's
and you don't
right.
quit your job. You know, I mean, so go and get into that environment
Yes.
where the Word of God is taught, because it is a
Yes.
life changer.
Yes.
It is.
So you can text us. Thank you for being on this show. Thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in. And Wisdom Network Live will be able to be found on Women Wanting Wisdom YouTube channel, and also on our Facebook page, Women Wanting Wisdom. You can check it out. Please share it. Would you go on there and on the Facebook page and just share it with your friends? Because I believe, like Dr. Singleton said, I think it's probably one of the number one primary diseases in our society
it
that's debilitating us,
Yes.
and it's changing our lives and our families. So we love you, we bless you, and wisdom will reach into your darkness
Yes,
and
yes.
pull you into God's perfect and blessed light.
Yes.
So God bless you. We're praying for you. If you want to text us your name or email us your name, this team will actually pray for you for the next
Yes.
month.
Yes.
We will cover you in prayer, and because prayer changes things.
Yes,
it
amen.
really
It really
does.
does.
All right, God bless.
Amen.
Well, I didn't say one.